All right, so I am back on with Coach Todd Charnetski. Todd, thank you so much for joining me again today.
Hey, Letty. Awesome to be back, talking about what we all love, running.
Yeah, absolutely. And I asked you to come back and maybe suggest one of the most prevalent questions that are out there right now, given that fall races, we're all training for them. And you suggested maybe let's talk about 5 key areas to work on for your running performance, which I thought was a amazingly great topic. And so I want to hop into that, but before we do, maybe we can talk about what a few of the common misconceptions are that runners have when they're talking about achieving their best performances. Perhaps there are some that jump out at you.
Yeah, I think out in the running community, the biggest thing that always comes up is, I want to get better, I want to get faster, so I need to run faster more often. So, and this mindset I think is very common for the newer runner for sure. Most runners might think back to when they ran when they were younger, or they took off some time and okay, I got to get back in the game, and I'm just going to start running. And oftentimes it's running hard, running too fast, too soon. We're an impatient society. We all want fast benefits, instant gratification. So I think, there's that tendency to want to rush the process. And I think in general, the mindset for many runners is, hey, I'm not as fast as I want to be in a 5K, a 10K, a marathon, so I just need to start running faster, literally faster in all my runs. And that'll tie into the topic today, but that's just not the proper way to go about it. Running speed, running faster is simply running faster, running with more speed. But the limitations in these endurance events are not running speed, it's endurance, it's stamina. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I try to educate, to the runners that I coach, the I Love to Run community where I'm a coach, is how to kind of put it all together to where you're growing as a runner over the long term. And to just simply go run faster is going to give you such limited gains. Sure, you might, your next 5K in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, you might do better, but where's that going to put you 6 months from now, 12 months from now? So,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know we hear that a lot, that people just run too fast, and it's really hard for some people to slow down, for others it's not. But especially with distances that are longer, we're going to talk about your first pillar, endurance. Now, before we hop into endurance, and I'll have you define what endurance also means, but before we hop into that, please let me know for which distances endurance training is actually important. Is it important for 5Ks and 10Ks as well?
absolutely. A 1 mile race is multiple minutes. So it's still an aerobic event. I think, the biggest part of your audience, and obviously we'll touch more so on marathons, but a 5K race is 90% aerobic. So, I think there's the misconception out there. I'm running a 5K, I got to do tons and tons and tons and tons of speed work. And obviously speed work and faster running is part of the recipe. But, a 5K is an aerobic event where we need to build endurance, build that engine to set you up for success. So yeah, any type of aerobic event, and even an elite runner running a 4-minute mile, there are a big chunk of aerobic components there. The 1 milers are running a lot of distance work too. So endurance is huge, and generally from that 5K to marathon, ultra marathon distance.
So it's the most important, well, one of the 5 essential pillars. And so let's talk about endurance. What does endurance really mean? What's your definition when you think about the word endurance?
Yeah, it's we're going to talk about these 5 pillars, and they all kind of interrelate very well. I mean, they're all good best friends. If you're missing one of these 5 pillars, it sets you up for an opportunity to grow. But I think the foundation of us runners and the ability to enjoy our running and to ultimately perform better and better and progress long term is to build endurance. And, most people can just probably figure out what that means, but it simply means the ability to run far comfortably. It's like, it's pretty simple, right? So I think so many runners kind of miss that point, and they want to jump into the fast stuff. But, I'll ask a runner, hey, can you run? Everybody's definition of a long run is different, but let's say 6 miles, let's say 8 miles, let's say 10 miles, let's say 14 miles. And I like to have, many runners that I coach be able to go out and run 8 to 10 miles comfortably. Can you do that? Before starting marathon training, say, oh no, I'm just getting back at it, and it kind of hurts to get through 5-6 miles. Well, that would be a true sign of a lack of endurance. So I think when you go out and say, I'm just going to go out and run relaxed and free and listen to the birds, and you can do that for 6 miles, 8 miles, 10 miles. That's a good mindset of, okay, this means I have some decent endurance. I can go through this without it being a struggle every minute, or the mindset that I want to be done. So that's the foundation of endurance, and then that's what we focus on, and that's what I focus on really in all my runners, and then kind of tie in the other pillars that we'll get to.
Perfect. So now that we know what endurance is, what are your most effective methodologies to get a runner to be better at endurance? In other words, what specific runs do you prescribe in your plans?
Yeah, it's, we talk about always wanting to run fast, and a typical athlete that I see is running too fast in their training. So the biggest thing is to teach a runner not what the heart rate shows, not what the analytics show or the zones. It's like truly go out and run easy. What feels easy. Sometimes I don't, the analytics, we'll get into that too. I'm a science guy and I like analytics, but, the industry has gone crazy with, our brains are going nutso with trying to look at our watch and the analytics. And I try to bring things into a more common sense world. And I think that resonates. So from an endurance standpoint, it really starts with, let's learn how to run easy. And I mean truly easy. It's like, well, what pace? No, it's a feel thing. You have to learn, if you go run 5 miles, oh, it was hard. Well, that means it wasn't easy, right? So, and if that means jog 5 minutes, walk a minute so that you can complete your 4 miles, your 6 miles, your 10 miles, where at the end of it, you're like, yeah, I'm tired, I'm comfortable, but that was fun. That felt good. And I think depending on the level of the athlete, it might start with, let's do some 3-4 milers. And build off of that. So run easier. Then ultimately, to continue to build that endurance, we would need to build off that as far as running longer, and obviously the importance of long runs as far as building, that aerobic engine. And we're trying to build this base of fitness, this big cake that we can work off of, so that these other pillars will be more effective down the road. So a lot of it just comes from more time on your feet. Let's build some miles. Let's build more days of running per week. Let's try to run longer. We're trying to build up, the foundation, the mitochondria, the capillary density, slow twitch fiber utilization, the ability to burn fat more efficiently. Because if you just go run hard, your body is going to go to that quick form of energy, which is carbs. And it works very efficiently. But as you start getting into longer runs and longer endurance races, there's some limitations with, and you only have so many carbs to work with, so you have to get better at building fat. So there's that process of just, taking the time, building that endurance, building those comfortable runs, and then when you build that foundation, then we can start tying in some of these other areas that will, make you an even more effective runner.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. And I have a follow-up question with that. As we as runners improve our endurance, and as you mentioned, everyone's really focused on their watches, will we see that easy run pace improve? And I'm asking that because literally I went to Kenya earlier in the year, and the fast runners that run 2 to 5 marathons, they are running their easy runs at 8, 9 minute pace, which
Yep.
you know is completely a lot slower.
Yeah.
Obviously, the focus is not to improve your easy run pace, but
Yes.
does that improve?
Yeah, I mean, when you start running more, you start obviously developing efficiency. The skill of running becomes easier. Think of a baby learning to walk. It's they're wobbling around, but in time they become a little bit more efficient. So the more you practice it, the more efficient you get, and these physiological changes occur. And oftentimes, again, we're looking at our watch. What's my max VO2? Garmin says it's going up, it's going down. Garmin says to improve my max VO2, I got to go run these hard 1K, 3K paced intervals, or aerobic training, endurance work, easy running builds your max VO2. It trickles up your lactate threshold. All these things improve with easy running, and with that, your paces start to improve without even trying. Again, I think we're trying to reach for the fast stuff so that we can feel better, and that's a component of getting better, because running faster does make certain paces feel easier, as we'll get into the stamina and speed stuff in a bit. But you got to build that foundation, and I think most runners can relate that 3 months after starting to run, perhaps even if they're not doing it the right way, oh geez, that 10-minute pace 3 months ago, now I'm running that same effort at 9-minute pace. So all these areas kind of overlap a little bit. You just can't work on endurance, or you just can't work on speed. And some of these things, overlap where you're getting a little bit of everything. I mean, by building your endurance, you essentially can also run faster in a 5K, 10K, which most would consider speed events. So yeah, all those physiological changes start improving, with just easy running.
Perfect. And so with that, I want to move on to the next key area to improve. And again, I'm going to ask you to define that one for me, because the next one is going to be stamina. And stamina sounds very much like endurance to me, but hopefully you can help me out making that
Yeah,
differentiation.
I think most runners would be, well, geez, that kind of sounds like the same thing. I mean, stamina is, you're going to go run far, and it takes stamina to do that, right? Yeah, they're definitely interrelated. I mean, and they work off of each other. I kind of look at it as a stepping stone, because you can work on endurance big time, then also do specific stamina work. I think sometimes we just want to do the stamina work and kind of avoid those easy, comfy type runs. But stamina, again, I like to keep things pretty simple. The ability to run longer, faster. It's as simple as that. It involves doing some specific workouts, and endurance work just in general will build your stamina. But then you can work specific types of workouts, and that's probably one of the questions that you're going to ask next, and I'll kind of tie into it. But the limitations with stamina, or the ability to run faster, longer, essentially is dealing with the crummy feeling. It's like, this doesn't feel very good. I need to slow down. And that's essentially, lactate management. As we start working harder than our body might like, and it's a challenge to keep up with the oxygen demands. And through Krebs cycle, the lactate is formed, in the process of building ATPs and energy. And sometimes if you're running a little bit too hard, the lactate and its byproducts and hydrogen ions and all these things just make you feel kind of crummy. So the challenge there is, how do you train that system? And that's where, the various type of workouts come in. I'm sure that's the next question is, what runners would term tempo runs or threshold runs, or I love a pace called critical velocity. There's progression runs. There's cruise intervals. There's so many different ways of taxing that system so that you're just better able to deal with the formation of lactate, and you're able to flush it through. You reuse it again. Lactate, gets a bad rap. Lactic acid gets a horrible rap. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's forming. We can use it as an energy source. Lactate does not cause muscle soreness, does not cause the pain during your runs. It's not lactic acid, it's the byproducts of the whole metabolic system, the ions and acidosis and that type of thing. That's what's causing the crummy feeling. And so we need to mix in the right recipe along with the endurance work to work on those systems so that you essentially can move the needle and run faster, longer.
Okay, so the clear difference that came to me is that endurance is basically just easy running and you do it for a long time, but then stamina is when you're pushing the system a little bit more by either running faster than your easy run or running that easy run longer, and then you're trying to build stamina.
Yep. Yeah. That's pretty accurate. And I think the issue with stamina training, and every training plan has go run a certain tempo run or go do these intervals or do a progression run or cruise intervals. I mean, again, there's so many ways to tax that system. And again, we're so programmed that faster is better. So I see many athletes, and I have to slow my athletes down too, is we have a specific goal for this workout. It's to help you manage and deal with lactate formation, lactic acid, however you want to call it. And many runners just want to go faster. So that defeats the purpose of the workout. So that's just a good tip for any runner is know what you're trying to accomplish in this run and stick to it. If you're trying to do a tempo run or lactate threshold or critical velocity and I'm going to press my coach, he's asking for 7:15, 7 pace, but if I run these at 6:45, he's going to be really happy. I'm like, no. You've now taken it from a lactate management or lactate threshold workout into a max VO2 where you're building more acidosis and a speed component, which those have their place in a plan too, but that wasn't the goal of this run. So it's just a good lesson, for everybody to kind of understand what the goal of the workout is and stick to it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean that can happen so easily. You're trying to impress your coach. I know
Yes.
I've done it. So.
And then I scold my athletes if they, politely scold them. I said, "Good job,
Yes.
you did it, but."
Yes, coaches write workouts for a reason, and we don't
Right.
understand, but that's why we hire the expert. Okay, so stick with the plan, and then that's one of the components you can reach by following that training plan. And then let me ask you about the next pillar that we have down here, which is speed. Obviously, we know what speed means, but how do you define speed in the context of distance running, and why is it a vital component for all runners, regardless of their primary race distance?
Yeah, exactly. And like I mentioned previous, people will say, I have quality workout, I have a speed workout, and they might run a, tempo run. I don't necessarily consider like a tempo run speed work. I classify it more into the stamina, endurance, there's a correlation there. But to me, true speed work is trying to get your legs to move faster. That's what speed is. Speed isn't, I did a little progression run and I ended up at marathon pace. That's not, you might call it a quality session, but that's not really a speed workout. Speed is, you could really define it and say, hey, you're trying to move your legs faster. Like as simple as, hey, I run a 40-yard dash in 5 seconds. I want to move it down to 4.8 seconds. Does that carry over into the world of endurance training? Probably not. But when we talk about, like I said, from a coaching standpoint, in incorporating speed work or speed drills, what I'm focusing on in the literature and in your watch, it's improved max VO2. And again, I don't get into, because people don't even know what that means. It's like, it must be a good number, it's going up, I'm stronger, I'm faster, I'm going to perform better. And it doesn't, I mean, obviously it correlates performance, but at some point, max VO2 after 5 years of regular training, you're not seeing it budge much. I think in the last 30 years, mine hasn't changed within 4 points. It doesn't mean maybe I haven't run faster at some point or run slower at some point, but how I incorporate speed work is to really help the runner become more efficient. Running is a skill, And as much as I'm a proponent of a lot of easy work, you have to mix in a variety of paces. And speed work is moving the legs faster, working on your form. Your stride mechanics change when you turn over the legs. And we're trying to, and that component, also helps those faster paces. Let's say you want to run a marathon faster. When you develop some speed skill, it makes those paces feel easier as well. So I look at it more like that versus I'm going to do these workouts to improve my max VO2. I'm looking at the on-the-road benefits of doing speed work. And I'm a coach, obviously I'm coaching a lot of average runners. And I think most average runners are looking at these plans and looking at elite plans. And it's like, I got to do 12 by 400 at this pace. And in my opinion, the average runner is just way overblowing the speed work out there. They're overcooking themselves on a regular basis. You don't need a lot of speed work to get the benefits that you're looking for. Again, the mindset is more is better. And rarely do I prescribe more than 4 by 200 meters in a speed session. And most people are like, what? That's nothing. But I stack it with stamina work in the same workout, so you get a kind of a synergistic effect. And it resonates, it's effective. I'm just not one to go pound out 12 by 400s. I just don't think it has a lot of application to the marathoner. The more elite marathoner, yes. But the average marathoners are probably doing way, way, way too much speed work. And but that's my philosophy. You can talk to the next coach next week, and they'll be all in on that, and their athletes are doing great, perfect. But I try to apply, what I coach and what I prescribe, how that can benefit in the event that they're training for. So I think that answered your question.
It does, and it's a very, very interesting take. I have a little bit of experience with something like that as we age. I felt like, doing 2 speed sessions and then a long run seemed to be a little bit much for someone that's working, young kids and everything. So, I felt like that was too much in one marathon. I was kind of self-coached. I was just kind of following my own thing, and I really focused just on endurance, a lot of easy runs, and then I did do speed work, but it was very little. And it was very interesting that my mileage was higher, but the speed work was way less, and the time of the marathon was still the exact same.
Yep, for sure. And I think, like I said, we talk about, aging athletes, and that's, I think, the ability to have a coach. You tend to work with athletes that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and they're just trying to, train correctly and get better. And we're essentially all aging athletes. And so how do you mix in, the proper recipe or the proper formulation to, every athlete's different. One athlete at 40 might be crazy fit and BQ, and the next one might be 30 pounds overweight. They're trying to get in the flow. How do we train correctly? I'm getting injured. So, as a coach, you adapt to the athlete. But I think, from a workout standpoint, how do we incorporate speed safely? I think that's a really good question I'll ask for you. But, there's some simple drills. Go to a hill, do some hill repeats, 30 seconds where you're running hard, not a sprint. Maybe you're not ready for a sprint. Maybe in a year from now you can sprint up them for 20, 30 seconds. But, mechanically, you're changing the mechanics. You're turning the legs over more. You're getting essentially like a strength component where you're kind of grinding through a hill drill. You do 4 of those. Think of it like going to do 4 sets of squats. You've just done that on a hill where you're getting a strength, power, speed component in a pretty safe manner. Another way to do it, which I'm huge on, is strides. Most of my athletes are doing these at least a couple days a week. It could be, have an easy run, just mix in 4 to 6 striders for 20 seconds, where you're running at a fast pace, but not all out sprinting, flailing, You're turning the legs over, and then I tell them, focus on your form. I use an analogy. Envision you're going into a stadium of 80,000 people watching you run, and you want to look really good. So practice that form, because you want to keep your form when you're doing these endurance races, that whether it be the end of a 5K, end of a marathon, you don't want to lose efficiency. So these speed drills, and this is skill work. So we're trying to work on the skill of running, the ability to open up your stride and strengthen your stride and be efficient. So these striders and hill drills, I often incorporate fast finish runs too. It could be an easy run, last 200 meters. Again, you're running in that stadium. Pick up the pace. Your legs are a little tired, but let's go through these drills of focusing on running with great form and turnover. Again, 200 meters doesn't tear you up. So you incorporate, you can do this less than 5% of your mileage doing these drills with strides and hills and fast finishes. And it matters so much without having to dedicate, miles of 400-meter burners where you're dying. Again, there's a place for that in certain athletes, but most of us don't need to go there.
I love it. This is really great. I'm glad you asked that question for me.
For you, right?
Perfect. So moving on to your fourth key component, which is durability and resilience, which is often overlooked, and then an injury occurs and then it's not overlooked anymore. So how do you define durability and resilience for a runner, and why is it as important as all the other components that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, durability and resilience is, it's huge, and I'm going to broaden it to a lot of subcategories. And I think, as a society, we're going out there and let's find the best plan. And if I do the work, I'll show up and everything will be great. But sometimes it's like, all right, I got to do some of these endurance long runs. I got these tempos and I got these speed work, and I'll just show up. But are they actually monitoring how they're feeling? Are they taking into play, boy, I'm really tired after that threshold work, but the plan says I need to run 7 tomorrow. I guess I'll work my way through it and grind through it. So I think resiliency and durability is really the ability to stay on the road. Your biggest gains, month after month, year after year, is the ability to stay consistent. And that's why I think we all have to just evaluate who we are and what we're feeling on a daily basis. Are we, putting in the effort to sleep well? Are we eating well? Are we, after a hard long run, are we fueling within an hour? Are we hydrating properly? Not only before, during, and after your run, but knowing tomorrow is going to be hot as well. Are we going into these other runs in your best possible state of recovery? So I think, those factors, if you take into account the sleep, the nutrition, the hydration, are you doing some strength work? Common sense says a stronger muscle means you have stronger tendons, stronger joints, you're more resilient. That's part of longevity and getting better. And oftentimes it's like we want to be good and be better in the event 8 weeks ahead, 16 weeks ahead. And it's like, I don't care about any of this other stuff. I'm just going to follow the plan and do my best. But I look always from a long-term growth standpoint, because of course we want to do good in the event in the weeks or months ahead, but we also want to keep improving and growing. And that's where these other factors, from a durability, you have to take the time. And that's the challenge of being a coach. What I love is so many runners are just not educated on the fueling component, the strength training component, the hydration, how you use electrolytes, how you time all this stuff, where all of that contributes to being a more durable, resilient athlete that will ultimately allow you to get better and better as you continue your run journey.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic, because especially for runners that are not coached, it's really difficult sometimes to distinguish between the normal fatigue from training, because you're ramping up mileage. If you have runners that are doing 50, 60 miles, you have some training fatigue, but then also there might be a potential warning sign that your body's trying to give you for an impending injury. So how do you suggest that people that are not coached, that can't just call you up and figure out, okay, you're just tired, you're just mentally exhausted, how do you suggest people kind of take those warning signs or build resilience through it.
Yeah, I think, that's a huge challenge, because there's, many athletes realize that, hey, I'm on a plan. Of course I'm going to be tired. There's going to be some discomfort, fatigue. And, it's a fine line of, yeah, you want to work through some of this because that's part of, building some toughness and resiliency through your training plan. I think there's a couple things to look at. And I guess we can talk about overtraining or under recovery syndrome, which kind of ties into this. I mean, if you're finding that, it could be just after a day, but in often cases, like, boy, after this last week or two, I feel drained. It's just hard to get up. I'm tired. I just want to crash and take a nap during the day. There's some physiological signs where you're just, physically drained, mentally drained. Central nervous system is shutting down. It's overcooked, so to speak. And so that's one sign that, maybe you just need a couple days of easy running or don't run. Let your body reset. Let your central nervous system reset. Let your muscles heal. Let things catch up. So I would say on a global idea, if just overall fatigue certainly is a warning sign that goes day to day, week to week, you need to back off some. And if you back off some, you're not going to lose your fitness, so don't panic. That's the fear of, I don't run for 3 days, I'm gonna lose it all. It's like, no, it doesn't happen. And then the other key signal is pain. I went out for a run. My last 3 runs, my Achilles hurts. Use pain as your signal. Your body is telling you that something is wrong, and it's warning you. And take the warning versus pushing through it to where that warning now becomes too far, where you've injured it, where now you're laid up. So use pain as a signal, but also pain doesn't have to be a panic. Oh, my foot hurt on my run today, I got to go to the doctor. You probably don't need to go to the doctor. You probably need a day or two of not running, or the next day you warm it up really well. Go for an easy jog. If it's there and hurting, stop. Give it a couple days. So I think we have to understand what our body tells us sometimes, whether it be from a fatigue standpoint or from a pain standpoint, and then react and just do the smart thing. Common sense says back off. So those are the two things that I normally see is this extreme fatigue response or, hey, something hurts.
Yeah, so back off. Don't try to make up for all the workouts that you haven't done because you can't
Right.
crunch workouts. And then, so basically, pain is a great indicator. As we know, fatigue is all over fatigue, but not any hot spots. But I'm going to throw you this one too. Phantom pains, right? Phantom pains are pains that are not real. They're kind of in your head, and they occur during taper, maybe because you're nervous about something. But then I also find a lot of times, just personally, when I'm running a marathon and my brain is telling me to back off and just take it easy, that something hurts. All of a sudden I have knee pain, and I've never had knee pain in my life. And then after the race, I'm like, this knee pain has vanished. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I guess we can let's first touch on maybe in a marathon where it's like, and I've had that happen. Actually, this last week, someone had these weird side aches and gut things. Like, well, what the heck? I've never had that in a training run before, and perhaps with you too, with your knee. I mean, I tell my runners, expect the unexpected going into a marathon, because you're going through an enduring event, and perhaps you're going to be on terrain that you haven't run before, or a course you haven't run before, and you're going to take your body to a different level of stress and fatigue. So, obviously, for you, let's say you're running a marathon, the adrenaline is flowing, you're tapered, you're prepped for this event at a high level. I mean, you're more prepared than any training run because you've gone through the taper, you've gone through your glycogen loaded, your carb loaded, you feel good. So then you take your body to a different level of stress. So that's where these things can pop up. It's like, why is my knee hurting? It's, well, because you're taxing your quads more than perhaps you did in training. So it might resonate or show up, hey, my knee's starting to hurt, or you're breathing harder for longer. So why am I getting this side ache? Or it's just because you're breathing harder longer, and your body wasn't used to that. So, you can look at, you can really dial it down. It's like, well, are my quads being taxed because I started off the race too fast? Is that why I'm overloading the muscles? Am I depleting my glycogen too soon? I mean, you can get into the science of why and break it down per race. But if you're doing everything correctly and that happens, it's kind of like, it's just a fatigue response, an overstress response that most of us can work through, unless it gets, unless there's a physical injury where, it gets worse and worse and worse, where you simply have to walk. And in some cases, you may take some fuel and it's be like, oh, I kind of feel better now. So that's kind of why that happened. And then to answer the other part of your question, the taper period, or what I call the replenishment period, because taper has kind of a negative, people don't like that word. So I think of it as replenishment. You're going into the event replenished and feeling good and healed. And so, yeah, I've had that happen too, where I've taken a week off, let's say to rest, a calf, and then I'm not running. And then my other Achilles that I had a problem with 2 years ago, it's like, why is that starting to act up? I think what happens, the body is used to being loaded a certain way. Like, hey, these tendons are used to being loaded and stimulated and creating circulation. And then as you back off, it's kind of, hey, what's going on here? You're not loading me like you did before, so I'm going to, talk to you a little bit. So I think that's just a natural phenomena, and there's nothing negative about it. More than likely, as you get back to training, all those phantom pains, so to speak, kind of go away. But look at an athlete who's been out there for years and years and years, and we're all kind of diseased in some way. And I say that not in a negative way, but our tendons have taken a beating for years and years and years, and they get, you get micro tears, you build scar tissue. You could probably do an MRI. I've had an MRI, and they tell me, well, when did you have this injury? I'm like, I don't remember this injury. It's like, it's like they see stuff that, from the past, and, well, it doesn't hurt. Well, it looks like you have scar tissue there. It's like, that doesn't hurt. So I think we're all kind of diseased in that way. It doesn't mean that we still can't perform great, but, we're putting our bodies through a lot of stress. And our tendons and ligaments and all those things become resilient and strong, and that opens up the door too to the strength training too, where because we're taxing all these things, we need to make sure all the musculature and strength is solid all around it, so that we can continue to run in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. So.
Yep, that's the goal. Thank you for explaining that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And let's go to the final and last key component, last pillar, race toughness. This sounds like a mental component as much as a physical one. So how do you find race toughness, and why is it critical for achieving our race day success?
Yeah. Race toughness is huge. Not to toot my own horn, but there's been a lot of years where I for whatever reason, injuries, tendon stuff, way back in the day, I didn't necessarily train that smart. But I would do 98% of my runs easy, but I'd show up on race day and crush it. It's like, why? You've never run 7 minute in training, and you go run a 6:53 5K. How does that happen? Well, I think it again goes back to the importance of endurance and base work that carries over quite well to any type of race. But race toughness is essentially the ability to battle demons that pop up during the race. So, and the demons are, it could be a mental component, even going into the race. It's like, oh, I'm nervous. Hope it doesn't hurt. I hope I don't injure myself. I know it's going to hurt. But it's also the ability to battle through discomfort. In any race, if you're truly racing, it's going to start to not feel good. And then you have a choice, essentially. And again, this is assuming you've done all the right things around fueling and hydration. And at no point would I tell somebody to put themselves in an unsafe situation or harmful situation where don't listen to this, or hey, you threw up 5 times, don't, no, so what? Just keep, going. There are some signals that tell you to slow down that you have to listen to. And so physiologically, I mean, that's the battle. Is it a mental issue, psychological, or is it a physiological thing that's holding you back? And I think we can look at any race, but let's obviously look at a marathon. So we talk about race toughness. You get to mile 20. I mean, most people are afraid of that. Oh my God, when I get to mile 20, it's going to be miserable. Those last 6 miles, and that's where now the race toughness starts. Now the race essentially starts, where you have to put yourself, or be prepared to put yourself in a state of mental fortitude and strength that you're going to have to. It could be, hey, I have to grind to just hold my pace now. Okay, that's race mode, battling the discomfort and getting to the finish line. We are built to self-protect, and when things start to not feel good, our natural tendency is to back off, slow down. So is that a psychological component? Is that a physiological component? I think there's things going on physiologically that will tell your brain, trouble is brewing. But in the moment, you're not in trouble. So that's that fine balance. Dr. Timothy Noakes came up with 1997 a model called the central governor model, where it's like, you're probably tired, you're hurting, but you maybe have more left in you. That's just the model of where do you want to take it? Do you want to battle through this, or you want to give in? So race toughness is huge, and again, back to me, it's like I thrive on it. It's like, I know that last mile of 5K is going to hurt, but I love it. If I throw up at the finish, I don't care. It's not going to hurt me. It's not harmful to me. And you could carry that over to longer events too. But you have to be careful with, obviously, marathon, because the harm can occur if you're not listening to certain signals around whatever, dehydration, depletion. If it's hot, you got to be smart. It's like, well, it's 90 degrees and humid. Coach T says I need to fight through the heat and my misery. It's like, well, there's some common sense element to all of this as well. If you need to slow down, you slow down. But that's the challenge, and what I work with my runners with, which is probably the next question, is how do you teach that? Can you teach race toughness? And the answer is yes. And the way to teach it, there's a couple things. First, we can pretty much safely say that those who are more fit are more tough. So if you're really, really fit, you're more resilient in a race and can withstand these, increasing, lactate, the discomfort. You're just more resilient. You can handle it and back off a little bit and then get back at it if need be. So one of the ways is just get more fit. If you're more fit, you're tougher. I mean, that's common sense. Another way is be smarter. Put yourself in a good position in a race, 5K, marathon. You have a 9-minute pace in a marathon, and say, all right, I'm going to go out at 8:45 and see if I can hold that, and hopefully I finish at 9-minute pace. Well, you're not really setting yourself in a position, setting yourself to be in a good position to be tough later, because you're being stupid. And you're going to get to mile 20, and it's no longer about physiology. It's about the stupidity that you did the previous 20 miles, and now you're in shutdown mode. It's too late. You can be tough to get to the finish line, and that's, again, a sign of toughness. Some people could just give up on it. So there is some sense of toughness there where it's like, you know what, I'm going to get there. I'm going to grind through. It's not going to be pretty. That's toughness. But, another way to do it is just to be smarter. Know what you're capable of on any race day, and that will set you up to the ability to finish stronger and be tougher. The other thing is some drills that you do that I work with my athletes. Mental, physical, faster finish runs. At the end of a long run, do striders. Like, what? You want me to run fast after I'm tired? Well, we want to keep your form. We want you to feel good. Faster finish long run. It's like, oh, I'm dying here, and you want me to run faster the last mile? You can do it. As long as you again, I don't want somebody to be unsafe, but make it happen. So you kind of practice being tough when you don't want to be. Do more 5K races. I love 5K races. I just love them. And I think an element of that is they build toughness. They hurt. There's nothing, I think they're fun, but most runners are like, number one, they're wasting my time because who wants to go do a race for 15, 20, 30 minutes and then go home? No, you need to show up and be part of the adrenaline of a race and line up and feel those nerves and get out there and learn how to pace and grind through that discomfort. In many cases, it's just the last mile. That helps prep you for races down the road. All these little things, all these drills, slowly but surely just make you a little more tougher and a little bit more confident too. So those are some drills that I do with my athletes and also helping them become more confident and even field work. What does it feel like in a race of a marathon? Miles 12 to 18, go run 6 miles and visualizing you're in miles 12 to 18 where I shouldn't be dying, so they back off a little bit and just teaching simulations to prepare them for being confident and strong in their various events. So
I love that this is part of your coaching, just because one, it's kind of a newer thing, and then two, I'm playing with Runna, that app right now, and it has workouts and everything, but that's the one thing that you will not get because it's just a plan that doesn't tell you those little things, and I feel like so much of a marathon is mental.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, it's like my passion is developing runners. It's if someone says, "Hey, give me a plan for 12 weeks, 16 weeks," sure, I'll do it, but I'm probably not gonna, other than some drills with race toughness and pacing, and are you gonna be a magically better runner in 12 or 16 weeks following my plan? Yeah, you're gonna learn some tidbits, but this is a journey. You have to evolve and make improvements and experiment, and that's where my passion is, and using all these pillars to help an athlete develop, and sometimes it's going back to basics and how do we keep your easy days easy, keep your hard days hard. How do we build these fundamentals to have an athlete improve so that they grow month to month to month, year to year to year, versus make me better in 16 weeks. That's fine. I like to do that, but I thrive more on putting all these 5 pillars together to create a total athlete that continues to thrive, improve, stay healthy through their run journey, and have fun. I mean, that's the foundation of the SMART approach is, we need to make this fun. We need to stay on the road, enjoy what we're doing, and then we can work hard and get better, while we're having fun.
I love it. It's like you're building, community, and I think that's why a lot of runners like you. So maybe, thank you so much, first of all, for explaining all of this and going through these one by one. There's so much great information and so much interesting stuff in there. And for somebody that would like to know more about your coaching and maybe get involved or just kind of check you out, how can they best do that?
Yeah, I'm out there in a few places. My website is smartapproachtraining.com. I'm on Instagram at runcoach Todd, and my Facebook site is Smart Approach Training. And then I'm also found on a Facebook community called I Love to Run, and I'm a coach there. I give weekly tips. I chime in on questions and answers. I've been on there since 2018 at Presence, known as Coach T, so you can find me there as well and learn some stuff with weekly tips and so forth. But yeah, I love to talk about all this stuff. I mean, it's a passion. It's really about education. In parting, I just want to tell runners, it's appreciate the sport that you're in, love it, and if you truly want to get better, just understand what you're doing and why you're on why you're doing a certain run. What's the purpose of that run? Where do you want to go? Is it all about just these next 12 weeks, or do you want to get better at all these things to where you're better a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, because we're all on this journey. It's not a short-term journey, and if you turn this into a fun, happy lifestyle and kind of do all the right things, it's magical. I mean, and running is magical, the journey is magical, and there's things that we can tweak and improve on, whether you're running 1 year or 30 years. I'm trying to get better as a runner. I've been running for nearly 40 years, and I'm trying to figure things out. So I love it, though. It's what can we do to get better? And better isn't always about running a better time. I can't hit times I did 20 years ago. I don't care. I love where I'm at, and I want to get better with where I'm at right now. And that's, I think, the mindset all of us should have. It should not always be about this obsession with the time. I think if you do all the right things, all that stuff takes care of itself. So.
Exactly, and it's all relative, and we can see that when Boston posts their
Yes.
race times requirements. So we know that as we age, numbers go down, VO2 maxes drop. But it's like the age graded chart, right? Like we can
Yeah.
still improve and be good for our age, and ultimately lead a long, happy life and run as long as we can.
Absolutely. You know it.
Well, thank you, Coach, so much. I appreciate you coming on.
You're welcome, Letty. I loved it. Let's do it again.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you.